Hey everybody, it's Jane. Today I want to show you a first in a series of basic hand sewing stitches. And today I'm going to show you how to do the running stitch, also known as the straight stitch. I use this for my cloth doll Meredith and her clothes. I use this stitch when I am hand piecing. And you can see that little running stitch. And remember, the smaller your stitches, the stronger and more durable your seams are going to be. And the same goes with quilting. You gotta really practice those tiny stitches, and the more you practice, the better you'll be at it. I use the running stitch for her clothes, and sometimes it's purely decorative. Well, it's holding the seam up, but I could use like a hem stitch or something that's more hidden. But I just really like how the little stitches look running together. But these are all completely hand sewn, and my major stitch is the running stitch. Okay, so I've got two pieces of fabric here, linen and cotton. I've got my needle threader, because if you tend to put the end of the thread in your mouth and wet it to get it to go through, you could end up with a knotting issue. So this really helps, having one of these. This one is by Clover. It's over 30 years old, and I use it all the time. I'm using number 9 piecing needle by Tulip. It's nice. It's a little bit of a bigger needle, but it's a really strong, really beautiful needle. Here's the thimble I use. It's a leather thimble. It's got a little piece of metal in it. For quilting, I use this kind of thimble, and sometimes I go back and forth between the two. For marking, I love the Friction. It's a heat erasable pen, and my new love is the air erasable sew line. So they're both great. They both have a downside. For the Friction, I found out the hard way. I started marking my lines with the Friction pen, but what happens when I would press them? They would disappear. So I went back to my original, which is just with a pencil, a mechanical pencil. So you've got to remember that. If you start marking with this and then you press, your line is gone. The other one I love is the air erasable by Sew Line, but again, it's going to disappear, so you have to work quickly. All right, let me bring my camera in. I've threaded my needle, so I put it through one end. There's that tail, and then I knot the other end, so I don't double thread it. And to knot, I just pull that thread down, put it on my index finger, cross with my needle, 1, 2, 3, squeeze, and then pull to the end. I don't have my beeswax with me, but I very often will drag my thread over beeswax to condition it and help it not to knot. Okay, so let's start with the linen. And hopefully you could still see, I did mark a 1/4 inch seam. I think when you're beginning sewing, marking your seam really, really helps. So then you're not getting all wonky and worrying about that and not able to focus on your stitches. So mark your seam. This one I did earlier, and you can see it's already disappearing. This is with the air erasable. So when you mark it and then just start working. So I'm a lefty, so I'm starting at the left side of my work, and I'm just going to take a small stitch here, like that, pull that through, And then I'm gonna do right over that one another small stitch like that. And that, I just call it a little lock stitch. And then, and another thing I didn't do, and then you absolutely can, is pin. If you don't want to worry about these two layers slipping around, get some pins. And you see how I'm pinning. I'm not pinning this way because it warps the seam and it also gets in the way. So I just come down and pin. Let's grab another one and pin like that, and that will keep everything together. All right, back to sewing. Grab my needle. And then I just go in and I kind of push the fabric right onto the needle like this. And I have, I think, 3 stitches there. Give it a pull, do not pull too tight. Right, so there are our stitches. These are a little bit bigger than I normally do. As I get older, I find I have to warm up. So again, you push that fabric onto the needle and rock it back and forth. Like that. And there is our seam being sewn. Now, a variation, I'm only going to show you this one, is you can do your straight stitch like this, and then every 4 or 5 stitches you do a back stitch, and that means you just go back and add a stitch there, and that just creates a really strong seam. And I use that with my piecing for my quilts. And this is just a really easy, basic stitch, and you'll use it all the time. So see, as I warm up, and this happens all the time, my stitches get smaller. All right, and that's going to happen to you too. And don't get discouraged if your stitches are bigger, they're not really regular. You just have to keep stitching. And honestly, if you do it, you know, I don't know, a few hours, you'll get really, really good at it. So I'm just rocking that fabric onto my needle. And with a longer needle like this, you can really put on a lot of stitches. Let's get to the end and I'll show you how I end this. I'll do a back stitch and then just keep on going. I use cotton thread. I don't ever use polyester, ever. But I'm really curious to try linen thread. So that'll be my next thing. All right, so as we get to the end, do a back stitch. What I do is, just like I began, I do a lock stitch, so one stitch over the other like that, and then I just do what I call a quilter's knot. That's what I learned. I take my thread, hold it over to the edge like this, put my needle through, and I'm pulling that nice and taut, put my finger down and pull like that, and I have a little knot there. You could do a couple of those and snip. If you want to bury your thread, you could just go through the back, weave it back and forth through those stitches. I don't really do that a lot. The other way to knot is to hold your needle right next to where the thread's coming out like this. Go around 1, 2, 3. Again, pinch and then pull your needle through, and you get a nice knot that way also. Normally it's not that big. It's because I showed you 2 different ways to knot. So that is how you do the really basic, much used straight stitch or running stitch. And this creates a really nice, strong seam, especially when you add in that back stitch every 4 or 5 stitches. Any questions, everybody, please ask in the comments. Go get yourself a couple of pieces of fabric, some thread, a needle, of course, and practice. The more you practice, the more regular your stitches will be, and the smaller they'll be, and you'll be zipping along before you know it.